Thank you for joining us, Mr. Benjamin. All the best for the new year.
Same to you and to all your viewers and listeners.
Thank you so much. And so let's start off. Dry weather outlook 2023. What it is we're looking at, what it is we're looking for.
Well, because of the presence of the La Nina, we are looking at near normal to just above normal dry season in the first half. And as the season goes on, it goes on to get drier. And maybe around March, we're going to have near normal to drier than normal conditions. So that in the first instance, in the first part of the dry season, we are looking at a lesser propensity for, let's say, bushfires and things like that. But as the season progresses, the prospect of having bushfires going to be increased as it gets drier.
Now, Mr. Benjamin, you say normal, and I start to twitch because I have the thought the new normal come into mind. But what does normal mean? What are some of those factors that we peg it against in terms of indicators that say, okay, well, this is what we expect. These are some of the things that are supposed to happen. And that's even before we start to talk about what La Nina is at all. So when you say normal, what are some of those things that you have a check mark and you say, okay, well, yes, this is supposed to happen, this is supposed to happen, normal. What does that mean?
Okay, when we talk about normal, we're talking mostly about the rainfall amounts. And for every month over the climatological period of about 30 years or so, we will take an average of the amount of rainfall we get in any particular month. Now, you would appreciate that in the wet season, the normal amounts would be greater than in the dry season. But when we say normal for any particular month, and in this instance, in the dry season, we mean that, or at least near normal, that the rainfall that we would get would be at least 75% to 125% of the average rainfall over a 30-year period. So that means we would be having near normal. Anything above that, above 125% of the average for that particular month would be considered above normal, and anything drops below 70%, 75% of the average for that particular month would be considered below normal. So when we talk about normal, mainly in this instance, we're talking about the rainfall amounts. So that January, we would have for January, the normal amount for January over a 30-year period is 77.6 millimeters of rainfall. And February, it goes down a little bit to 49.6, and also March 31.5. And thereafter in April, it will begin to rise again to 58.8. And that is in millimeters. So these are the type of figures we're looking at. So when we say normal for any particular month, we're talking about the average that that month is expected to have or is calculated for over a 30-year climatological period.
And I love the fact that you brought it back to that climatological period of 30 years. And within that time span, have you seen trends that are looking as though is either going a little up or a little down? Because now it seems as though, well, not it seems, weather is changing, the climate is changing. So how has that trend been on the later stages of that 30-year period, Mr. Benjamin?
Well, let me say from the onset, the world of meteorology, the meteorologists around the world and everybody are concerned with the warming trend of the climate. We are in a warming trend. We are seeing the effects of it gradually. So that, yes, we are having that warming trend over the period. Um, while you cannot look at any one incident and attribute it to the whole global and climatological scenario, we could still take points. For instance, just last year, we had the wettest November of all time, and that would have given us um, the wettest November for Trinidad. That would have given us 469.9 millimeters of rainfall when the normal was just 242. So that we are seeing a trend for warming temperatures, and what that could do is cause events to be more severe in some instances.
That makes me want to ask the question about water management, but that is another conversation for another day. But we spoke about La Nina. What is La Nina, and how does it impact this region or this area, specifically Trinidad and Tobago?
Okay, the La Nina is a phase of what is called the ENSO, ENSO, El Nino Southern Oscillation. The La Nina phase is when the equatorial Pacific waters or surface waters is cooler than what is normally average over the same period, over the climatological periods of time. So that when the equatorial Pacific is cooler, I think is around between just close to a degree cooler than normal, then we would have a La Nina. And that is because the equatorial Pacific wind flow or the trade winds across there is stronger. So it would be skimming off the warm tops of the water and pushing it more to the Western Pacific over into the Indonesia. And because of upwelling, the waters become cooler in that area. What that means for Trinidad and Tobago is that usually in La Nina year, we would have, my term is that a buoyancy of the atmosphere that would assist in convective development so that we would normally expect to have more developed convective activity and greater than normal amounts of rainfall in the La Nina times.
And we continue this conversation with you, meteorologist Gary Benjamin. When we return, we're looking at the dry season, or the dry season is here, and some of these things that we're supposed to be looking at. But also, I want to get a little idea of what goes into forecasting when we return, so we do that. Stay with us, we come back with more. Welcome back. We are going in on the weather. We're doing so with meteorologist Gary Benjamin. And I remember there's a line from a movie saying one person was telling another, the person who always walks around with an umbrella is a pessimist. And then the person with the umbrella told him the person who doesn't is a fool. But I mean, there are those who are critical of meteorologists, Mr. Benjamin, especially when there are unexpected shifts. And when I say unexpected shifts, I even think about November when you said instead of 200, there were 469 millimeters of rainfall. So give us some of those ins and outs of forecasting so viewers can get a clearer picture of what it entails. Thank you.
Okay, the forecasting starts from the climatology. So we look at the climate factors of the area of the globe where you are situated. For instance, we are in the Caribbean, we are in the tropical weather, so we would understand how the climate operates in that area on a broad sense. And then we have to bring it back down into the state of the global circulations. For instance, like El Nino, La Nina, the Madden Julian oscillation, and what that has to do, how it would enhance or depress the weather as the case may be. And then we take an historical account of what has happened in that particular area that we are looking to forecast for or predict for. We take into account an historical account of what is happening, what has happened within recent times. As we say, we talk about global warming, what is likely to occur, and the trends. And also with that trend, we look at the present state of the atmosphere. So now we have a picture of what has happened over a long period of time and coming on, and we see a sort of continuity sometimes, and sometimes we see a moving away from the particular trend on any given day. So we have to have analysis now of what is happening with all that historical account. We have to have an analysis of what is happening presently. So we have recordings, we have different instruments, we have satellites, we have radars, we have radar sound balloons, we have personnel trained people to go and observe the weather and record what is happening in the atmosphere, temperatures, wind speeds, and things like that. Now, when we gather all that data, also we are passing it out across the world to be ingested into climatological models or predictive models, numerical mathematical models, to predict the weather in some sense forward. Now, these models are tools. So the analysis of the forecaster, his experience, his knowledge, his understanding of the particular area of where he is forecasting for, with all that information now, he could make a prediction because he understands how the weather is likely to behave. And with the help of the numerical models, they are tools, so we have to have the input of the meteorologist. So with the help of the numerical models, we could now make a prediction of a certain amount of certainty, so to speak. So we have a probability. So we may say by this afternoon, because of how the atmosphere is set up and how it is this morning and how it is trending, we are likely to see a thunderstorm occurring in western areas, and there's a 30% chance of that or a 60% chance of that, as the case may be.
And you raise that point, and I thank you for it. And it also reminds me of the fact that the Met Service is very active on social platforms, so you can actually follow the Met Service and find out what is going on, get an idea, as opposed to after the fact you say, oh, shucks, did really say so, you know. But you spoke about reaching out, and the last time we spoke, you spoke about sharing information with Miami, and it's very heartening to know that a lot of the time information that we may get from there for this area, for this region, for this jurisdiction that we're in is coming out of our Met Service. And who are some of the other people that you would liaise with in terms of giving them these forecasts, giving them these outlooks on the ground in Trinidad and Tobago, and the kind of impact that makes? So is it ODPM? Is it other people you say, okay, well, these people need to know that this is what the climatological trend is showing, and these are some of the things that we can expect in terms of implementing? Who are some of those people that you would share with, those stakeholders?
But yeah, we have different levels of clients and stakeholders. So one of the major stakeholders is, of course, ODPM and the public weather forecast, because the public wants to know what's going on. We have the oil industry. We have all sorts of private and public sector industries that we would reach out immediately, and the disaster management units. And we will try to immediately reach out to them as soon as possible, because they are in a lot of instances the first respondents. So we would reach out to any and everyone who needs our weather information for their business and for their day-to-day lives and for the safety and protection of Trinidad and Tobago as a whole. We also have some sort of jurisdiction, I would say, in giving Grenada and its dependencies our information and liaising with them. We liaise with every meteorological service across the Caribbean. We also liaise with Miami because we are in Region 4. And if we need any more information from anyone else across the globe, we have ways and means where we could reach out to them or even go through Miami or Washington and get the information, because the meteorological information, as I like to say, if you make a forecast and you keep it for yourself, it is still not a forecast until it reaches the people who needs to use it. So that we put our information out there in the World Weather Watch, WMO, World Meteorological Organization system and communication systems, and it would be distributed worldwide. So at any one point in time, somebody could query a database and find out what is happening in any part of the world in organizations under the World Meteorological Organization.
I like that, Mr. Benjamin. You can't just have the information and keep it in your pocket. It makes no sense like that. With regard to sharing that info, though, action, preparedness is required regardless of season that we're in. So for dry season or at this point in time, tips for citizens during this period as we look and see what is happening, because you even would have spoken to a little bit about bushfires as well. So what are some of those tips that you'd want to share with people who are looking at this conversation right now?
The earlier part of the dry season, as I said, is expected to be just around near normal or a little above normal. We have adjusted it slightly, ever so slightly, but it remains nearly the same for all intents and purposes. So the prediction is just in the earlier months of the dry season, near normal to just above normal. And as it gets drier, of course, we're looking at the bushfires would put a lot of smoke in the atmosphere. As it comes later down in the dry season, we see the increase in Saharan dust. And that is one of the things that people who may be affected by the Saharan dust in some way to have their medication, check their medical practitioner to have their medications up to date and up to filled out and up to standard for your use. You have to sensitize as the place gets drier. We have to sensitize people to the possibility or the ease at which bushfires could take place. So people have to be sensitized about not burning or indiscriminately burning or setting fires and things like that. We may have landfill fires and different issues like that. So the dry season really is to prepare for the heat and the dryness. So that when we say that we're looking at water also, and at no time at all in the year, whether we have an abundance of water or dearth of water, we are supposed to be treating water conservatively. So that at no time at all, and even more so when we are at a lesser rainfall amounts and more dry, then we are expected to be even more highly conservative as far as the water amounts are concerned.
I like the fact, Mr. Benjamin, that you give that distinction between heat and dryness. But as always, we ask for contact information. What are some of the handles that we can follow the Meteorological Service so we can keep ourselves in the know, please, and thanks?
Okay, Trinidad and Tobago Met Service, we are on Facebook. So if you search for Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service, you can get our Facebook page. We are on Twitter and Instagram, the two major ones. I believe we are on TikTok to a certain extent. So once you look at look for TT Met, because there are other Met services across the world. So you have to get that TT or Trinidad and Tobago in. And when you look at Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok, you could also go to our page at www.metoffice.gov.tt. And the information is there for you so that try as best as it is to treat the weather seriously and take a look at what we have to say in the first instance every morning. Take some time, look at what we have to say. And because the weather is variable and ever so changing, we have weather forecast, a public weather forecast at 6 a.m., 10 a.m., and 4 p.m. every day. The 4 p.m. forecast would give you a 3-day outlook. And then we also have weather updates on Facebook. And if it's a Friday or Thursday or whatever, we would give an outlook depending on how the situation looks over the next 2 days. So you can have weather outlooks on Facebook and Instagram, and you would also get all 3 forecasts for the day. And then if there's anything untoward or different out of the ordinary, of course, we will be posting that. So you have to be looking at our pages constantly and consistently to find out how the weather goes, because we may say something in the morning, and as I said, as we analyze more and more with more information coming in, it may change by 10 o'clock and we may have a slightly different forecast. So that is to keep consistently looking at the weather forecast.
I want to thank you so much for the work that you and the service are doing. Gary Benjamin, meteorologist of the Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, I'm Dike Rostant. This has been In Depth with me. Thank you so much for joining us.